In March 1905, Gertrude Bell left Damascus. She had lingered there for several days, enjoying the comparative luxury the city afforded. It was a brief pause in a long and strenuous journey. Bell, archaeologist, linguist, and seasoned explorer, was charting a course through the interior of Ottoman Syria, accompanied only by a small party of hired hands. The Ottoman authorities, ever cautious of Europeans with notebooks and surveying instruments, watched Bell closely. The governor of Damascus had insisted on assigning her an armed escort, not so much to protect her as to ensure her movements were seen. Bell declined politely, claiming she would travel by train. In truth, she had no intention of doing so. Before sunrise, she slipped out of the city on horseback, determined to avoid the suffocating shadow of official hospitality.
We left the city on a bright and sunny morning. The roads were full of cheerful wayfarers, and our horses tugged at the bits after the week's rest. I altered my route and struck straight into the Anti-Lebanon, the better to avoid the attentions of all the official personages who had been warned to do me honor.
By the time she arrived in Baalbek, the rain was unrelenting. Bell's cook, Mikhail, a Lebanese Christian familiar with the local communities, introduced her to a Christian woman from Mount Lebanon, who offered them shelter. What began as a simple act of hospitality soon unfolded into an evening of shared stories and quiet fears. With her husband in America and sectarian tensions rising at home, Bell's host felt caught between two lives, one marked by hardship, the other by uncertainty.
They told me that they were very anxious about their future. The greater part of the population of Baalbek and roundabout belongs to an unorthodox sect of Islam called the Metawila, which has a very special reputation for fanaticism and ignorance. These people, when they heard of the Japanese victories, would come and shake their fists at their Christian neighbors, saying, "The Christians are suffering defeat. See now, we too will shortly drive you out and seize your goods." Mikhail declared that it was the same thing at Jerusalem. There, said he, the Muslims had sent a deputation to the Mufti, saying, "The time has come for us to turn the Christians out." But the Mufti answered, "If you raise a disturbance, the nations of Europe will step in, for Jerusalem is the apple of their eye."
The Metawila, more commonly known as Twelver Shia Muslims, had lived in Baalbek in southern Lebanon for centuries. Their presence likely solidified during the Shia-friendly Fatimid era from the 10th to 12th century and persisted through periods of persecution under Ottoman rule. The community's mountainous location was no coincidence. In the Levant, religious minorities often clustered in remote and inaccessible areas, both by choice and by force. These regions, Baalbek, the Jebel Druze, the Alawite Mountains, provided refuge from state surveillance and sectarian violence. A shrine in Baalbek marks this long Shia lineage, the tomb of Sayyida Khawla, believed to be a great-granddaughter of the Prophet Muhammad. For the local Shia, it remains a place of pilgrimage, though largely invisible to Western travelers who came seeking Roman ruins. Bell's host, though a Christian herself, had no desire to return to her native mountain village in the Lebanon. The phrase carried a very specific meaning in Bell's time. It referred not to the modern nation-state of Lebanon, which would not exist until 1920, but to a semi-autonomous Ottoman province created in 1861 under European pressure, following a wave of brutal sectarian violence between Maronite Christians and Druze. The province was administered by a non-Lebanese Christian appointed by the Sultan, but only with the approval of the European powers, most notably France, which had long claimed the role of protector of Christians in the Ottoman East. In theory, this meant the Christians of Mount Lebanon enjoyed peace and some degree of autonomy. In reality, life was often narrow, conservative, and desperately poor. The woman's reasons for staying in Baalbek, despite the dangers, were practical. The life she had left behind was not a romantic refuge.
There, no one has any business but to watch his neighbour, and if you put on a new skirt, the village will whisper together and mock at you, saying, "Hast seen the lady?" Look you, I will show you what it is like to live in the Lebanon. I eat meat in Baalbek once a day, but they once a month. They take an onion and divide it into 3 parts, using 1 part each evening to flavour the cracked wheat, and I throw a handful of onions into the dish every night. Life pinches in the Lebanon.
This testimony reflected a much larger pattern. In the late 19th century, mass emigration from Mount Lebanon had already begun. By 1905, entire villages were emptying out, their young men, and sometimes entire families, boarding ships for the United States, Argentina, Brazil, or West Africa. Some sought escape from poverty, others from conscription or sectarian tension. The pattern would continue for decades, giving rise to the now vast Lebanese diaspora, especially in the Americas. Baalbek, known in antiquity as the City of the Sun, had been a religious center for millennia, first for Phoenician deities, later under Greco-Roman rule, and eventually as a site shared and transformed by Christian and Islamic faiths. The city's towering temples were the largest ever built in the Roman world. The site stood as a testament to centuries of cultural layering. Roman engineering rose upon older Eastern religious sites, and later faiths adapted the remains to their own purposes. Even in ruin, Baalbek's scale defied neglect, commanding awe from archaeologists, pilgrims, and travelers alike.
The great group of temples and enclosing walls set between the double range of mountains, Lebanon and Anti-Lebanon, produces an impression second to none save the temple group of the Athenian Acropolis, which is easily beyond a peer. The details of Baalbek are not so good as those at Athens, but in genial effect, Baalbek comes nearer to it than any other massive building, and it provides an endless source of speculation to such as busy themselves with the combination of Greek and Asiatic genius that produced it.
With Baalbek behind her, Bell turned northward. The landscape grew harsher, wind-scoured plains and rocky emptiness, but it was not without signs of human tenacity. Here and there, the ancient logic of Syrian irrigation revealed itself. Low earthen ridges scattered across the terrain, discrete markers of something hidden below.
Buffeted by the furious wind, we rode on another hour and a half to a line of little mounds protecting the air holes of an underground water channel. A qanat, it would be called in Persian, and I believe is so called in Arabic.
These qanats were masterworks of desert engineering. Quietly powerful, they tapped distant aquifers and channeled water through subterranean tunnels, sometimes for miles, emerging where life could take root. In arid zones from Iran to Syria, entire towns and orchards have survived because of these forgotten hydraulic systems, carved from stone, sealed from evaporation, and maintained across centuries. As Bell rode further north, she entered regions inhabited by a community referred to as the Nosairiyeh, known today as the Alawites. Their beliefs, often hidden, had long been the object of speculation, fascination, and vilification.
Native report speaks ill of their religion, following the invariable custom by which people whisper scandal of what they are not allowed to understand, and I was told that the visible signs of it, as expressed by the conduct of the sect, left everything to be desired. My experience of their dealings with strangers leads me to adopt an attitude of benevolent neutrality.
The Alawites emerged from a syncretic, esoteric branch of Shi'ism in the 9th century. Dismissed by both Sunni and mainstream Shia scholars as heretics, they took refuge in the mountains of western Syria. There, beyond the grasp of imperial authorities, they cultivated an identity that was part Islamic, part pagan, and deeply secretive. Under Ottoman rule, they were officially tolerated, but excluded from power. Bell continued north into the wide valley of the Orontes. a river rising in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley that winds its way north through Syria, crossing into southern Turkey. The landscape was scattered with traces of buried empires. One site, Tel Nebi-Mend, stood out above the rest.
The site must have been inhabited almost continuously from Hittite times, for history tells of a Seleucid city, and there are traces of a Christian town. Each succeeding generation has built upon the dust of those that went before, and the mound has grown higher and doubtless richer and richer in the traces of them that lived on it.
This place bore the weight of 3,000 years of memory. In the Bronze Age, it was one of the southern capitals of the Hittite Empire, a formidable Anatolian power that rivaled ancient Egypt in wealth, literacy, and military strength. The Hittites, whose empire stretched from the Aegean to the Euphrates, were among the first peoples to forge international treaties, adopt Indo-European languages, and inscribe their laws and myths onto clay tablets. Their cities were organized, their religion syncretic, and their kings were chronicled in stone. Bell, standing atop the ancient city, was drawn to both its archaeology and legendary role in military history.
My interest, while I stood upon the mound, was chiefly engaged in picturing the battle fought at Kadesh by the Hittite king against the pharaoh of his time, which is recorded in a famous series of hieroglyphs in Egypt.
The Battle of Kadesh, fought around 1274 BC, is considered the earliest military engagement in history to be documented in detail. It saw Rameses II of Egypt clash with Muwatalli, the second of the Hittites, each commanding tens of thousands of soldiers and war chariots. Though no clear victor emerged, the battle ended in a peace treaty, the first recorded diplomatic agreement known to historians, a copy of which now hangs at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Bell's next destination was the Syrian city of Homs, a place where she found herself notably less at ease. Despite the warm reception offered by the Ottoman sub-governor, the Kaymakam, the city's crowded streets left her feeling more like prey than guest.
The Kaymakam offered me a soldier to escort me about the town, but I refused, saying that I had nothing to fear since I spoke the language. I was wrong. No knowledge of Arabic would be sufficient to enable the stranger to express his opinion of the people of Homs. Before I was well within the bazaar, the persecution began. I might have been the Pied Piper of Hamelin from the way the little boys flocked upon my heels. I bore their curiosity for some time, then I adjured them. Then I turned for help to the shopkeepers in the bazaars. This was effective for a while, but when I was so unwary as to enter a mosque, not only the little boys, but every male inhabitant of Homs, or so it seemed to my fevered imagination, crowded in after me.
Homs was no backwater. Its striped basalt and limestone architecture echoed the grandeur of other Levantine cities, and its notable silk industry was alive with the clatter of looms. Bell admired the sober artistry of its homes.
Homs has a character of its own, the big houses standing round courtyards adorned with simple but excellent patterns of white limestone let into the black walls. The effect is simple and rather splendid, and the courtyard with its central fountain and orange trees and flowers is the most charming feature of the Syrian house. These city dwellings differ little from those in Damascus, but the inhabitants of Homs are an entirely different race from the Damascenes. They have a reputation for wildness and ungovernable temper, which they fully deserve. In almost every house there is a loom, whereon a weaver is weaving the striped silk for which Homs is famous, and every street is bright with the dyed yarns that hang across it from house to house.
While in Homs, Bell sought out the city's religious, political, and intellectual elites. Under Ottoman rule, this ruling class was almost exclusively Sunni Muslim, and their conversation reflected both pride in their own orthodoxy and a wary eye toward those living beyond its boundaries. One such group were the Nosairiyeh, or Alawites, a secretive sect whose mountain isolation and esoteric beliefs had long made them subjects of suspicion to the Sunni majority. Homs lay close to the Alawite mountain ranges, and many Alawites descended seasonally into the surrounding plains to work as farmhands for Sunni landowners. This proximity gave the city's elite a certain familiarity with them, but also reinforced existing social and sectarian hierarchies. The local judge, or Qadi, and Homs's wealthiest landowner, offered Bell coffee and conversation. When she raised the question of the Alawites, the judge answered with an anecdote about reincarnation, which he claimed was among their core beliefs.
They believe that when they die, their souls pass into the bodies of other men or even animals, as it is in the faiths of India and of China.
This doctrine of transmigration of souls marked the Alawites as unorthodox. It also aligned them, at least superficially, with the Druze, another secretive mountain-dwelling sect that believed in spiritual reincarnation and whose theology blended elements of Islam, Neoplatonism, and Persian thought. But their difference wasn't only in theology. Their isolation in near inaccessible mountain enclaves functioned as a kind of cultural preservation, ancient rites and cosmology surviving where mainstream Islam had long swept through. Bell observed,
living apart in mountain fastnesses that have remained almost inviolate, the Nosairiyeh have held on to the practices of ancient Semitic cults, and they occupy an honorable position in the eyes of Syriologists as the direct descendants of paganism, while remaining themselves profoundly ignorant of their ancestry.
Officially viewed as heretics by Ottoman authorities, Alawites were excluded from government posts, military service, and legal protections enjoyed by recognized sects like Christians or Jews. This marginalization persisted into the early 20th century. However, with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the arrival of the French Mandate in Syria, a dramatic reversal began. The French, seeking to divide and control the diverse population, actively recruited religious minorities, including the Alawites, into their colonial security forces. Over time, this provided many Alawites with military training, social mobility, and institutional power. That shift laid the groundwork for a remarkable political transformation. By the mid-20th century, Alawite officers had risen through the ranks of the military, culminating in the 1970 coup that brought Hafez al-Assad, an Alawite from the coastal mountains, to power. His family would dominate Syria for over half a century. Later, Bell steered the conversation toward one of the most controversial religious movements of her time, the Baha'i faith. Born in 19th century Persia, the Baha'is preached the idea that divine truth is revealed progressively through successive prophets. It was a doctrine that threatened established religious hierarchies, and in much of the Islamic world, earned the Baha'is suspicion and persecution. The Qadi, well practiced in the art of polite deflection, offered a familiar response, cloaking theological judgment in a proverb drawn from prophetic tradition.
I asked him next whether he had any acquaintance with the Baha'is. He answered, "As for the Baha'is and others like them, Your Excellency knows that the Prophet, may God give him peace, said that there were 72 false creeds and but one true. And I can tell you that of the 72, there are certainly 50 in our country."
Bell, neither affirming nor challenging his view, shifted the terms of the conversation toward humility and shared mystery.
I replied that it appertained to prophets alone to distinguish the true from the false, and that we in Europe, where there were none to help us, found it a difficult task.
The Qadi then offered a gentle barb, capturing the Ottoman world's cautious admiration for European science.
"In Europe," said the Qadi, "I have heard that the men of science are your prophets." "And they make answer that they know nothing," I observed. "Their eyes have explored the stars, yet they cannot tell us the meaning of the word infinity.